You're listening to the Talk of the Tribe, Wapsie Valley Warrior Podcast, brought to you by Little Wapsie Communications. Their state-of-the-art fiber network is complete in Fairbanks, ready to serve your home or business with the fastest internet in town. Orin Mutual Telephone Company. Serving the area since 1911, Orin Mutual is a modern, independently owned telephone company providing internet and telephone services to Orin, Iowa, and the surrounding rural area. RTC Communications. They are here to provide high-quality, superior service to you, the customer, by offering great customer service and the services you want and need to work and stay connected with family and friends. This is the Talk of the Tribe podcast, coming to you from the center of Warrior Country. Here are your hosts, Zach Favors and Riker Oberly.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 19 of the Talk of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Zach Favors, who is not joined today by Riker Oberly. He is currently in Waverly at an orthodontist appointment, so we're just going to roll it today. I had to get one out. I'm heading to Utah tomorrow, so I had to get one out today before I left. So that's the goal today. We're getting through the episode here. We got a final look at fall sports. I guess playoff football is our last thing we're going to talk about in the fall sports season. And then we got some winter sports coming up. We're excited about that. It's finally here. I call it one of the best seasons of sports ever. You get that transition from football, you get playoff high school football into basketball and wrestling. So it's a great time to be a sports fan. So recapping playoff football, Wapsie made it to the quarterfinal round. We said that, and I think Riker and I predicted at the start of the year. I predicted they were going to make it to the Dome. I said I thought they were going to make it to the state championship game. I really did. The way this team looked, and I knew every Wapsie team that has ever existed, maybe besides one or two, always is way better, about 1,000 times better when we get to the playoffs. Because I will say, going to that Denver game and the early games of the season, it did not look particularly like this was a state championship team. Now, when we get into the playoffs, around the Coconut Valley time, that's when I was like, "Ooh, there's a real chance we go to the state title game this year." And they welcomed in a very good West Hancock team, a rematch of last year's playoff second round playoff game, which West Hancock won that game 16-9, I believe. But this game had a much different story. West Hancock came into the game 4 running backs who had rushed over 500 yards, 500 to around 750 yards between all 5. They each had run for over 500 yards. And Wapsie had a great defense. They haven't given up really any points for like the last 5-6 weeks. They've given up like 12 to 18 points in the last few weeks. Pitching shutouts against Coconut Valley, AGWSR, teams like that. South Winneshiek, North Tama. But so we figured this was going to be a little bit more low-scoring game. You had 2 very good defenses, 2 offenses that relied heavily on the run game. It was going to be a low-scoring game. Well, it was definitely not. West Hancock picked up the victory over Wapsie Valley 44-22, doubling Wapsie Valley's point total that night. And it was a little bit of a rough go at it for the Warriors. The defense, I don't know, 44 points is, you're never going to win many games if you give up 44 points. But, I mean, Wapsie was there until about the fourth quarter, middle of the fourth quarter. It kind of looked like things were starting to slip away from them. We'll get to a more in-depth look at this game real quick. I'm pulling up Varsity Bound to get all the stats real quick. So, for the winning team, West Hancock, their quarterback, Mitchell Smith, had 1 pass that was caught for 35 yards. Yeah, if you want to talk about a run-first offense, that's that right there. 1 pass, and it was caught. That was it. Just 1 pass. And their rushing attack was even better. Their leading rusher, Kale Zool, he's a senior, 31 carries for 183 yards, an average yard per carry of around 6 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns on the night for him. it was just, and then Mitchell Smith as well, their quarterback, 13 carries, 97 yards, about 7.5 yards a carry for a single touchdown. Kale Zool scored 24 out of 44 points. That's crazy. Their rushing attack alone scored, we'll say around, I don't think they kicked a field goal at all. All they did was go for 2. So they scored, their rushing attack pretty much did it, the entire workforce. But that night, 319 rushing yards. I will say it was a little bit of a bold move from Cody Jones to go to a 3-man front, especially from this heavy of a run-first offense. They switched to a 5 front later in the game, but to no success. So, yeah, Cody Jones is in a little bit of a tough spot there. You had Foster with the offense. It wasn't really working for him all night. They had a good rushing attack, and they had a lot of good things come out of that game, but it just wasn't good enough for them to get going. Defensively, they did have. All right, we'll look at special teams quick. They did have one kick return for a touchdown. Jackson Peterson had 2 returns for 105 yards, an average of 52.5 yards of return, and 1 touchdown. If you want to know, they started off the second half kick return for a touchdown first play. Pretty good. They also had 1 fumble recovery. They had 4 sacks. So the offensive line, Decker was running around in that pocket. I do not believe they had any interceptions. I do not believe they had any interceptions. So Decker did a great job of taking care of the football. Besides one time, I think we said coming in that if Wapsie makes any mistakes, they have to play a perfect football game, and that's really hard to do against a good team like West Hancock. So West Hancock going on to the Dome. They'll be taking on Woodbury Central, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 95% sure it's Woodbury Central. On Thursday, which is 2 days from now, and then the other Class A game happening in the Dome, Madrid will be taking on East Buchanan. And that East Buchanan team is on a mission. Let it be known. I believe that if I had to make a pick for the state title game this year, I think East Buchanan is going to win the state title. I think they beat Woodbury Central in the state title game. So there you have it. There's my pick. But moving on to Wapsie Valley stats here. Trayton Sauerbrei, in his final game as a Warrior, had 14 carries for 91 yards, average about 6.5 yards per carry. Kanan Decker had 17 carries, so more than Trayton Sauerbrei, for only 58 yards, 3.4 yards a carry for 2 touchdowns. Trayton Sauerbrei in his final game as a Warrior did not record a single touchdown on the ground. Receiving wise, Trayton Sauerbrei had 1 reception for a yard. Ian Bazinski had 2 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown. Hunter Curley had 1 reception for 32 yards. Defensively, Wapsie recorded 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss, 48 total tackles, and 28 solo tackles. No fumbles, no interceptions. Kick return wise, Dallas Tissue had 2 returns for 24 yards. Trayton Sauerbrei had 3 returns for 43 yards. Ian Bazinski had 1 return for 20 yards. Tucker Latterberg, I believe, had 4 kickoffs for a 164 yards. I do not believe he made a field goal. I take that back. He was 2 for 2 on PATs. And then Chase Ackerman he had 1 punt for 48 yards. By the way, I want to point this out. Chase Ackerman made special teams MVP as a punter, so congrats to him. We had a lot of first team players. We had quite a bit second team players. We had 2 honorable mentions. We had 2 MVPs in Trayton Sauerbrei and for offense, I believe. And then we had Chase Ackerman for punter. So congrats to them. Congrats to everybody who made first team, second team, or honorable mentions. Congrats to all of them. But now we move on to winter sports. Basketball, wrestling, all the sports here at Wapsie Valley. Going into the winter, I really like this wrestling team that we're setting up this year. We did lose A few guys last year that'll hurt us. Dawson Schmidt, especially. He was kind of the workhorse of this team. We have some good company. Kanan Decker will be back as a junior, and we still have 2 more years of Kanan Decker. I believe he has what it takes to go far in the state tournament. I believe. Trying to think of everybody else we have. We have a lot of young freshmen. Landon Frost made it to the state tournament last year. I expect him to be pretty good this year. Caden Belinsky, he's going to be pretty good. He has been wrestling a lot of tournaments over the last few weeks. I expect him to be really good, holding it down at 106. Obviously, Kanan Decker. When we get to the back half of the lineup, you're going to be looking at a lot of young guys. You're looking at some guys like Derek Hilsenbag. I know he's a senior, but he's going to be, I believe he's bumping up to 285 this year, so he will not be a 170-pounder wrestling 285. So that's good. But we did lose quite a bit of people in that back half with Keegan Brown. He was really good. He unfortunately graduated, and then you're looking at a lot of young guys on this Wapsie Valley team. But I believe they are going to go far this year. I mean, this Wapsie Valley wrestling team is known for being good every year, so they're known for being contenders. So I expect them to contend. And we're looking at basketball wise. Yeah, basketball is going to change a lot. The entire starting five is going to change. I expect to see a lot of younger guys, maybe some juniors, some sophomores, but you're going to see a lot of different people on that starting five because last year our entire starting five was seniors. So I expect to see, you're going to see a lot of new faces, but I expect this team to kind of rotate more. We saw last year it was kind of the mainstay of Andrew Westfall and Casey O'Donnell and Mason Harder. Those were the 3 guys that were in kind of the whole time. I mean, that starting five was in a lot for Wapsie Valley. So I expect a little bit more rotational basis this year. I don't know what Marty McCown wants to do. We're probably going to preview that here in the next few episodes with Marty, and we might get Brian Crawl on to preview wrestling. Also, robotics. We haven't talked about robotics at all on this podcast, but they are something that, excuse me, even though they fly under the radar here at Wapsie Valley with not being a big program like football or basketball, they are very successful. They won a tournament over the weekend. They placed first out of, I believe, 6 teams at a tournament, and then they are rolling it. They almost made it to the World Championships last year. They placed really high at state championships, so they have done a great job with that robotics program. Mr. Gross, or Vaughn Gross, I should say, has done a great job with that robotics program. So, I guess moving on, Wapsie Valley is going to have 9 basketball home games this year. I will be on the call for all 9 of them, along with, we have a lot more wrestling home duels this year, so I will be on the call for those too. So be sure to check those out, give them a look, and I mean, it's going to be good. These teams are going to be good this year, like they always are, so you could come out and support, or if you can't be there to support the teams, be able to watch online and support our live stream and support your teams from the comfort of your own home. So, moving on to some segments here. First off, as always, we're going to some screen time. I don't have Rikers, unfortunately, so I will be both a winner and a loser today. We're going to see what it is. For me, you're looking at 5 hours and 41 minutes for me. So I guess that's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah, 5 hours 41 minutes for me. But now, I guess to the segment you've all been waiting for. It's the Talk of the Tribe Athlete of the Week. Now, here's the deal. All right, this is a pretty contended for award. I don't know if contended's a word. That's probably not a word. But anyways, there's a lot of contenders for the Talk of the Tribe Athlete of the Week every week. This week, though, we have a little bit of I was thinking about who deserves to be Athlete of the Week this week. I was thinking about it. There's some people that had good opportunities. Briggs Bamey, just kidding. Shout out to Briggs. He asked me to shout him out on the podcast, so there you go. But there's a lot of contenders. I think Jackson Adair has a real shot at it. Jake Shore has a real shot at it. I mean, just for what they've done on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, you could look at Tucker Latterberg. He's done great. Special teams, wide offense and defense. He stepped in at center this year, which he started out as right guard, moved to center halfway through the season. He's been a clean fit for him ever since. So he's done a great job. I could look at Brock Kleitch. He's done an amazing job as well, holding it down on the right side with Tanner Curley. Kanan Decker, as always, and obviously you can never forget about Trayton Sauerbrei, which I will say, it's not Sauerbrei or Decker this week. I feel like I just give it to him too much. I can't just give it to Sauerbrei every week. And finally, for the first time in what seems like forever, Sauerbrei did not run for 500 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns in a week. So, yeah, I am thinking about who it's gonna be, and this winner of the Talk Tribe Athlete of the Week was suggested by a Warrior fan himself, my dad, Andy Bavers. He suggested that I give it to Jake Shore. So Jake Shore is our Athlete of the Week this week. He's done a great job all year. I think we haven't talked about it much, about his defensive impact. He's had an amazing, phenomenal season on the defensive side of the ball, with how many sacks he's had, tackles for loss, solo tackles even, at a spot where defensive end where, I mean, half the time the ball's not even going to come your way. I mean, it could go on the opposite side of the field almost all the time, and he's still making a big impact on offenses. And speaking of offense, on the offensive side, he is a lockdown at left tackle. He has not really missed a step there all season. He's been a great blocker. That's Trayton Sauerbrei has to be very thankful for to be able to run behind Jackson Adair and Jake Shore on that left side of that line, because they hold it down over there. So shout out to Jake Shore. He's the Talk Tribe Athlete of the Week this week. So shout out to him. And we're moving on into winter sports. So you're going to get to see more of a mixed bag of Athlete of the Weeks. You're going to have men's basketball, women's basketball, wrestling. Heck, I could give it to some robotics people if I wanted to. Which that could be interesting if they do well enough. But you never know. If you have ideas, you have suggestions, you have topics you want to see talked about on the Talk Tribe podcast, let us know. You can talk to Brett Bergman, Blake Boer, anybody. You can talk to me. You can talk to Riker. Just tell one of us what ideas, what suggestions you have, stuff you want to see on the podcast. We'll take all opinions. So I believe that's going to be all. This is a little bit of a shorter episode. I didn't have a whole lot planned today. Try to get through. I think I went through things a little bit too quickly, but that's all right. So, plus I got to get going. So, we thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Tribe Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Bavers, who is not joined by Riker Oberle today. But hey, he'll be back next week, hopefully, and I'll be back next week as well. So, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Talk Tribe Podcast. We'd like to thank Brett Bergman, Blake Boer, Shane Kelly, everybody who helps the podcast, everybody who helps the podcast as well. And by the way, before I sign off quick, I have heard that everybody liked the volleyball promo video that we did. If you're listening to the Talk Tribe podcast and you want to see the promo video make a return for basketball and wrestling, let us know. We'll make it happen. It was not my idea that got taken down. Blake wanted to take it down because he didn't like it that much. I thought it was hilarious. I've heard from a lot of people they thought it was hilarious. So we'll bring it back. You just got to let us know and let us know that you want it back. So we thank you for listening to this episode of the Talk Tribe Podcast, episode 19. We're on to winter sports season. It's going to be a great time. So until next time, go Warriors.